In this episode of Hardtail News, we're going to take a look at the brand new Trek Roscoe. So Trek just updated the Roscoe, and we're going to take a look at it. I don't have one in front of me, so we're going to do the next best thing and look at all the information we have online on their website. But yeah, we're going to dive into geo charts, what we like about it, what's changed, what hasn't, make some assumptions until I can get one in for review. For a long time, Trek has not had any hardtails that have interested me, but this is a very interesting hardtail. So we're going to take a deep dive. It's going to get nerdy. It's going to get detailed, but you're going to get to see how my brain thinks when I look at hardtails and compare them. And even if you're not interested in the Trek Roscoe, this could really help you in your next bike purchase. So pay attention, even if this isn't the bike you're looking for. I've been getting a lot of questions about this, and hopefully this answers a lot of those. All right, let's dive in. Here we are at Trek's website. Let's see. Wow, there's a lot of choices here. Mountain, full suspension, cross-country trail. Hard to know where that's going to be. We're going to click mountain. Trek's website's always a little bit lacking, so let's see if this works out well for us. See the bikes. Oh, there we go, Roscoe 9, Roscoe 8. Good, they got those front and center because they're new. All right, $2,700 for the top of the line one. Roscoe 8's $2,300. Roscoe 7's $1,600. Yeah, it's a little confusing. Roscoe 6. That's got a steep head angle. That looks like an old one. Oh, no, this is the new model. You know me, I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to tell you exactly what I feel and what I think about these. Let's look at the Roscoe 9. Ooh, that's cool looking. So it definitely looks different. It looks rowdier. It looks more aggressive. Excellent. No more quick release axle in the rear. A lot of you have been asking me to review the old Trek Roscoe, and I've been dragging my heels because it would not fare well under my review. And I'm not here to just make bikes look bad, but any bike with a quick release rear axle with the small itty bitty skewers in there, it's just outdated and it's not what I would consider a serious mountain bike. Sure, you can still have fun on them, but it's a major holdback. Those weren't boost compatible. They were flexier axles. I've been on many rides where they've dropped out and the axles have come out and the wheel came out while people were riding them. So anyway, huge plus for having a through axle with boost. Boost is the standard for wheels. I have 9 boost wheel sets, and anytime I get a bike that's not boost, I can't use any of those wheel sets on it. And I believe it's worth getting a hardtail that you can upgrade over time and that's compatible with standards. So if it's not a boost hardtail, it can still be a great bike, but I don't think it's going to be a great buy because one day you're going to want to update the wheels and get a nice wheel set on it. And it's a little bit pointless to spend $600 to $2,000 on a wheel set that's already limited. So I always recommend going for boost bikes. So I'm really glad that this is boost. Now, boost isn't magical. It's just the standard, and it's what we've settled on, and that's what most bikes have. I agree that boost was dumb. I don't think there's any huge incremental improvements over it other than everyone's using it. All right, cool. Cool paint job. Internal routing. It looks like it's in a good spot. It's aluminum, I'm guessing, by these big fat welds. I like those XR4 team issue tires. All right, so for $2,700, let's take a look at what we've got. All right, cool. Post mount inside there. I like that. Nice and tucked in. A little chain guide on the front. All right, they think we're going to get rowdy on this thing. I like that. Room for 2 water bottles. I know a lot of people care about that. I like 2 water bottles if we can fit them, as long as they don't interfere with the dropper. So the Roscoe 9 is new this year. It's the highest end model Roscoe. The Roscoe was always seen as kind of a budget bike before, one that you'd put in a rental fleet or put a kit on that was, you know, dropper compatible and might have had a fork that you could change the air pressure on, but it wasn't what you would call a high-end build. $2,700, that's definitely not budget entry-level category anymore. This is serious hardtail range. I'm betting this is competing strongest with the Specialized Fuse, which I really loved when I reviewed that. If you haven't seen that review, go check it out. Roscoe 9 is our best trail hardtail. I'm going to agree with that. Trek has really been boring lately on the hardtail front for trail and aggressive and fun hardtails. I love the Stash. Stash is one of my all-time favorite hardtails for its time, but it's a little long in the tooth. Geo's outdated, reach is super short, head angle super steep. C-tubes are super long, and they discontinued it, and I'm sad about that. And Trek has not really had any serious offerings in the hardtail world, in my opinion, unless you're an XC racer. And so for me and my friends and what we like on this channel, especially just trail, having fun, all-rounder hardtails, I'm excited that this Roscoe got updated because they're right. This is their best trail hardtail. There's nothing else really in Trek's lineup that interests me unless I'm XC racing. It's built for lap after lap of dirt-filled fun, a 140 Fox Rhythm 36 fork. All right, couple cool things going on here. It's a 140 fork, meant to get rowdy, or at least meant to appeal to people who get rowdy. It's a Rhythm 36. This is a new fork this year. I love the Rhythm 34. It's a little bit heavy, but it feels great, and it's a great feeling fork for the price. And putting a 36 on here means it can handle even more abuse. It's going to stay stiffer when it's ridden harder than a 34. It's also going to be heavier. So a 140 mil 34 is a little bit longer than I like. I start to feel too much flex in Fox 34s when they're over 130 mil travel. 130 and below, I'm fine with a 34, but over 130, I'm glad they went with a 36. That's really smart. Powerful 4-piston brakes. I'm not completely sold that 4-piston brakes are always going to be better than 2-piston brakes, but a lot of people have keyed in on, my next bike is absolutely going to have 4-piston brakes, and Trek knows that, and so they put 4-piston brakes on here for you. A fast and grippy wheel and tire combo, delivering awesome capability whether you're nailing jumps or picking through gnarly rock gardens. Cool. Matte quicksand to olive fade black. I think that's a cool color. All right, we got the Roscoe 8 for $2,300, Roscoe 7 for $1,700, and the Roscoe 6, you can even tell just by looking at it, it's not even the same bike. Look at the stand over here. Look at the angle of that top tube compared to this, and the head angle. You can see. I'm pretty sure the Roscoe 6 is just last year's Roscoe with a new paint job and new parts because they've got all these frames left over. And unfortunately, people that don't know how to read geocharts and read specs, i.e. most new riders who are new to this sport for a year or two, are going to hear that the Roscoe's great, and then they're going to go buy the cheapest one, and then 6 months later they're going to realize, oh boy, this isn't the Roscoe that they were talking about in that review. It shouldn't be named the Roscoe in my mind. It's a completely different frame. It shares nothing in common with the other three except for the name. So just write that off. Do not look at the Roscoe 6. All right, let's look at some more of their marketing stuff. It's right for you if you love the serious, fun, and connected feel a hardtail brings to the trail, and you want one that's spec'd with top-notch parts that love rough and tumble runs as much as you do. These aren't top-notch parts. They're good parts, but they're not top-notch parts. The tech you get, a lightweight aluminum frame, a 140 mil Fox Rhythm fork with 36 mil stanchions, SLX/XT 1x12 drivetrain. I hope it's an SLX derailleur with an XT shifter. We'll see how they did that. It's usually the other way around. Trek's a little old school, so I'm betting it's an SLX shifter with an XT derailleur, which is the wrong way to go. Powerful 4-piston brakes, a dropper post. I would hope so on a $2,700 bike. Fast-rolling 29er wheels, room for 2.6 tires. Cool. Rip laps, catch air, and crush techie descents on our best hardtail. Of all the rad parts on this bike, the Rhythm 36 is the best upgrade. It's capable of soaking up even the roughest lines. Now, I agree. So when I shop hardtails, I don't care a ton about drivetrain or brakes because they're all very similar to me. I know that's going to bother a lot of people, but a fork is way more noticeable than a drivetrain. If you have Dior drivetrain on there or XTR drivetrain, it's going to make a 5% difference, and you probably won't be able to tell the difference blindfolded. If you've got a Fox Rhythm 36 on the front, or a Pike, or a Lyric, you're going to feel a huge difference on that over a RockShox Gold, or a Sector, or a Recon, or something like that. And I think that's the smart place to put your money, is in a bike that has a great fork. Because buying forks, a nice fork, is $500 to $900. And anytime you can buy a bike with the parts already on it, you're going to get it way cheaper than if you buy the parts aftermarket. I think it's probably going to be a bit overpriced, but that fork is really going to make it stand out from the Roscoe 8. And the Roscoe 7, that might be a great way for you to get started into the sport. I need to look at the specs a little more. But if you're going to ride it seriously and it's going to be your only bike, you're going to I would plan on upgrading that fork in the first year. And that's a good, like I said, $500, $600, $700 to upgrade that. Now, the good news, it's the same frame between the Roscoe 9, 8, and 7. So feel free to get the cheap one and then just upgrade where it matters. That's a really good way to do it. But for some people that don't have the skill swapping parts or don't want to try and track down a fork right now during this bike shortage, it's really tough to find the fork that you want. They might be better off just buying the 9 out of the gate. We're going to look in that a little bit more and compare the levels, but that's my initial thoughts on it. All right, let's read through a little more marketing stuff. 29er wheels, wide 2.6 tires. I think that's a great idea, especially on a hardtail. Mike Levy recently rode the Growler, and he fell in love with the 2.6 tires and how it smoothed things out, made it easier. Personally, I either like True Plus tires with a 2.8 to a 3.0 width, or like a 2.3, 2.4 narrow width. For my weight and how I ride, the narrower tires dig in and grip more, and I can rally harder and corner harder. They just fight and claw for grip a little bit more. I know 2.6s have a bigger contact patch, but they do offer a little bit, I don't know, I just feel like they're kind of not great at either thing. But feel free to disagree. A lot of you I know love 2.6s. And on some bikes, 2.6s make a lot of sense and are a lot of fun. My biggest issue is I think most 2.6 bikes come with too narrow of a rim. And if you can get that out to a 35i, then the 2.6 platform comes alive. But it doesn't quite feel like a true 2.8 or 3.0 where you get that flotation. And I almost feel like I can ride a 2.8 or 3.0 width tire harder than I can ride a 2.6. I just feel like the 2.6 isn't quite floaty enough to get the floaty traction, and it's not quite pizza cutter enough to dig in and get the traction that I get out of the narrower tires. But they are pretty light. It's not a huge feeling jump to go from a 2.4 or 2.5 up to a 2.6, and it does take out a lot of the sting. It can make a chattery hardtail feel a lot better. So I'm glad that it fits those. And while 2.6s are awesome and a lot of people love them, I'm glad they exist. I like even wider because I'm weird. So those are my thoughts on the tire. Bigger, stiffer 36 fork stanchions won't flex. They will flex, but not as much as a 34. So you can push harder with more precise, confident steering that helps you stay on your line. I agree with that. And I think on hardtails, the way we ride them, we are over the front a lot more. And we are asking more of our fork than a good full suspension, because this is our only suspension other than our tires and our human suspension. And we weight the front of a hardtail a lot more because that's what's absorbing all the bumps. If you weight the back of a hardtail, you're going to be jarring. If you can weight the front more and let the front soak up those bumps and really dial in your fork, you can make a hardtail really come alive. I'm going to talk about that more in an upcoming video, but they're right. Having a stiffer fork makes a lot of sense on a hardtail. A lot of people would say, why would you do that? That seems dumb. Hardtails can't be ridden hard. You know, you're not sending big stuff like you're on a full suspension. And that's true in a sense, but I do think a fork works harder on a hardtail than a full suspension if you're riding it aggressively. The Fox Forks air spring can easily be adjusted for a specific rider weight. So I'm glad that they said this. I refuse to review bikes on this channel that do not have a fork that can be adjusted for different riders' weight. You can't get a good feel for a bike with a 130-pound rider and a 230-pound rider on the same fork. That's just ridiculous. And so a lot of people ask, why don't you review $800 bikes? It's because those don't come with air adjustable forks. And those of us that are used to shopping for higher end bikes expect an air adjustable fork, but the fact that they have to say this means a lot of their audience is newer riders, and I'm okay with that. And I love educating newer riders and saying, hey, you do need a fork that you can adjust the air pressure in it, or you're going to have a hard time really getting your hardtail to respond the way you need it to. All right, they've got a dropper post and they explain what the dropper post does. I think that's good for a lot of people new to the sport who might have heard the term dropper post but don't know what it is. We've got a really cool video here with our dog, Cam McCall, two very stylish riders. And don't be fooled, they could ride a shopping cart and make it look fun. These two are absolutely incredible riders. We're just gonna skip through a couple parts of this. Typical, awesome shredding and jumping. I really like Cam McCall. I think he's a great thing for this sport. and he's an incredible rider. And Trek is smart to put a YouTube video out on that. They're starting to understand that YouTube and videos, that's what we want. We don't just want a page that's vague and then we don't have enough information. So by them being able to offer all this info in one spot, I think that's really a great way to educate their customers. These guys are incredible. They'll jump anything. And based on what I've seen, I think this bike is far more capable of that type of rowdy, jumpy, playful riding than the old Roscoe. I think it's weird that we're seeing ads for shirts and hip packs and stuff before we even dive into more of the bike. All right, let's learn about this. The Strong Quiet Hype. Roscoe stays well protected with a double-sided chain stay guard, tough down tube guard, and internal cable guides that help your ride stay quiet even over rough trails. I'm interested about these internal cable guides. What do they mean about that? Do they just mean it guides it internally, or is there something internally to keep it quiet? One of the reasons I don't like internal routed cables is that they are clanky and noisy on a lot of bikes, especially aluminum bikes, because there's no tube and tube like on a carbon bike. It's like the Yeti Arc. That bike has a straw inside the frame and the housing goes right inside it and there's nothing for it to rattle on. On a lot of these steel, titanium, and aluminum, these metal bikes, they just have an opening port and an exit port, and the housing just rattles around in there. And because hardtails get more chatter and are bouncing around and aren't as smooth as a full suspension, that inner cable can just clank away, and that is the worst. So hopefully Trek has found a way to make it not clank. We'll see. Progressive trail geometry. Just about everybody's saying this these days, but we're going to take a look at the geo chart to see if it's true. Long reach, slack head angle, steep seat angle, and short chainstays combine a ride that's confidence-inspiring yet still nimble and fun. You will never hear me say the words confidence-inspiring or nimble in a review. I think they're so overused that they don't mean anything anymore. We get what confidence-inspiring means. Nimble, when I ask someone what nimble means, they're like, oh, this bike's so nimble. And I ask them what that means. I get a completely different explanation from every rider. So nimble, can it turn on a dime? Is nimble that it jumps well? Is nimble that you feel in the bike instead of on the bike? Or does nimble feel on the bike instead of in the bike? I don't know. This is a lot of marketing speak. I think it's a little bit garbage to just say all that stuff. That said, I do like long reaches, slack head angles, steep seat angles, and short chainstays. That's the sort of thing I like. But, you know, marketing is going to do what marketing does. They're going to hype up a bike, make it sound perfect, so you want to buy it. Ready to get rowdy with a 140 mil front travel, trail smashing 29-inch wheels, and dialed for dirt frame features. It's ready to get rowdy on your favorite rides. Just looking at it, it looks rowdy. All right, let's take a look. Boost, tubeless ready, good. Internal cable routing, I'm not a fan, but it's not a deal breaker. Threaded bottom bracket. It's like Trek knows what we want and they've put it in here. So even though I don't like internal cable routing, most of my viewers do. Let's see what else we got here. Dropper post, ISCG mounts. Cool, you could run a chain guide or a bash guard on there. All right, here we go. Specs. Boost 148, Fox Rhythm 36, max compatible fork travel 150. So some of you are going to want to bump that 140 up to a 150. I'm going to probably want to bump the 140 down to a 130 as long as the stack isn't too short. I just feel 130 is the sweet spot for most trail bikes. Let's see. Hubs are Bontrager brand. Bontrager hub. Rim is a Bontrager Line 30, 28 hole. Interesting. So a lot of rowdy bikes are 32 hole. There's more spokes on them, which means the wheels can take a beating more without deforming. 28 hole is a little bit softer riding usually and a little bit lighter. So that'll be interesting to see if that comes into play there. XR4 tires, those are wonderful. They've got a 120 TPI on there. I think that's smart. 120 TPI is lighter than 60 TPI and it's more supple. I prefer 60 personally, unless I'm bike packing or just doing XC rides. But it's smart to put these 120s on here because people are going to ride it. And if that aluminum frame's harsh, this is going to take out a little bit of that harshness. Max tire size, 29 by 26. Now the extra small goes down to 27.5 tires. And I think that's smart. I think that's a good idea. All right, shifter. Dang it, they did it wrong, Trek. They're stuck in the old ways and they need to change how they're thinking about these and speccing these. The shifter's SLX and the derailleur is XT. I'm really disappointed about that. It's not a big deal at all, but Trek had an opportunity to really break the mold and show the world how to do this the right way. But back in the 90s, we would always judge a bike by looking at the rear derailleur, seeing what brand it was, and assuming all the other spec was that way. And if you saw an XT rear derailleur, it had XT brakes, it had XT shifter, it had XT hubs, it had an XT crank, it had XT bottom bracket. And we knew by looking at that derailleur, because that's where it was most visible, that what spec the whole bike had. Then they started getting smart and they realized, well, what if we put an XT derailleur on it and Dior parts all throughout or SLX parts all throughout? And they started doing that. We've been doing this for so long, I just feel like it's a little bit misleading. And besides, the shifter's the more important part. I would take an XT shifter with an SLX derailleur all day long over the opposite. The XT shifter has that double click and it's got a crisper, more precise shift than the SLX shifter. We're straining at gnats here. This isn't a big deal at all, but Trek could have flipped it, and I really would have respected them had they done that. A few bikes we've seen on the channel have done that, and I really have a lot of respect for those companies. All right, cranks, 170s. Yes, I love seeing that, except for the XL has a 175. Great. Threaded bottom bracket, external bearing. I would hope so at this price. SLX cassette, going to be a little bit heavier than an XT or XTR cassette, but they feel pretty good. Dior chain. All right, 34 tooth max chainring, no problem. Now, for those of you new to Bontrager is the component brand of Trek. So Trek owns Bontrager, and all their bikes have Bontrager parts on them where it makes sense. Tires, seat posts, bars, stems, cranks, things like that. So handlebar, we got a 750 width on the size small and a 780 on the mediums through XL. Stem, interesting. Size small is a 35 mil stem. Medium through extra large is a 45 mil stem. Brakes are M6120 4-piston brakes. And that's because they know people care about the number of pistons more than whether it says SLX or Dior or XT on it. All right, weight. That's impressive, 28.95 pounds. I can't wait to get one in front of me and weigh it and see if that's true. Bike has a maximum total weight limit of 300 pounds, so this thing can handle some bigger riders. Good. All right, let's look at the sizing chart. So I'm 5'6", I have short legs, a long torso. I usually size a little bit bigger than sizing charts recommend. I like a long reach. I like a 450 mil reach. So what I'm gonna come down here is find the frame reach right here, and 455, that's a medium large. That is what I would want for rowdy riding. The 440 is what I would want for bike packing or long days in the saddle. I like a shorter reach when I'm just spinning along and not maneuvering over anything crazy. Like Northern California, 440 all day long. Colorado, rowdy Arizona, Lake Tahoe, Downeyville, I'm going to want a 455 because that's a longer reach. I can charge a little bit more. I can move around on the bike when I want to do big, steep, technical climbs and moves. I've got more room to move around without my knees hitting. So I'd be a medium large there. So then the next thing I look at is the seat tube length. 435 is longer than I want. I can't fit a 150 mil dropper on a 435 seat tube. I just know because I've ridden a whole bunch of bikes. So seat tube wise, the medium is going to fit me better. And Trek is unfortunately here, it's a little bit still old school. Their seat tubes are still longer than they need to be. They're way better than they were. They're way better than the Stash. But man, if they could chop another 20 mils off those, or even 10 or 15 mil off that medium large, that'd be the size for me. So I either have to decide, do I want the reach I want with the 125 mil dropper, or do I want a longer dropper with a shorter reach? I'm sure I'd be fine with either, but that's interesting. Large, let's look at the reach. 470, that's pretty good. XL, 495. That's long, but not super long. If you're 6'4" and above and you ride rowdy, you want to just blast down stuff, chunky stuff, black diamond stuff, enduro type riding and pace, I would recommend longer than 495 reach for an XL. All right, let's look at some other stuff here. They're all 29-inch wheel size. Seat tube angle, 73.1, but that doesn't matter as much as the effective seat tube angle. Oh, effective 74.7. That's getting there, but I still wouldn't call that steep. And so now that I see this, I think the medium might be a better fit with me. So something like the Ragley or the Stanton Sherpa, they've got short reaches, but they also have slacker seat tubes that are kicked back a little bit more. And so when you're seated, you're a little bit more comfy. When you stand up, things get tight, but when you're seated, that slacker seat angle works better with the shorter reach. So seeing that the effective seat tube angle is not as steep as I'd like, I like to see in the 76 range for a 450 reach. I'm thinking the medium is probably going to be better for me. It's not as steep as some. So be it. I'm assuming this GeoChart is at static with nobody on it, not at sag. And the head angle is 65 degrees. Well done, Trek. Bravo. Every year, it seems like bike companies go longer, lower, and slacker by like 1/4 of a degree or maybe a 1/2 degree. Trek moved this over 2 degrees from the last model to this. That is significant. This should ride nothing like the old Roscoe at all. Other than sharing the name, it's going to feel totally different. And I think 65 degrees is bang on. That's right where I like a trail bike. I can get as rowdy as I need to without feeling like I'm going to go over the bars, but it's not so slack that it's tough to steer on flat green trails. So that's 65 degrees with a 140 fork. So if I put a 130 fork on that, that's going to be 65.5. I'm fine with that. If you run a 150 fork, it's going to get even slacker. All right. Effective top tube, great. Bottom bracket height. Bottom bracket drop. Ooh, nice, Trek. A 61 mil bottom bracket drop. That's impressive. And I assume this thing's going to corner extremely well with that low bottom bracket. Now remember, bikes never ride quite like their GeoCharts, but this is the best way to make assumptions about how it's going to ride without throwing a leg over it. Chainstay length is 430. Nice, safe number. I wish I saw it change. I wish the small had a 420. Medium had a 425, large had a 430, and XL had a 435, because otherwise just the front center is growing on each size, but the rear center is not changing at all. But that's okay. Not so short that you feel like you're going to loop out everywhere, but not so long that it's hard to get playful on. Cool. It's got a 42 mil offset fork. I like that. Wheelbase is reasonable. Standover means absolutely nothing to me. I would not put much stock in standover numbers. Instead, I'd look at the seat tube length numbers to judge standover. Stack. Okay, not bad. Cool. So based off the geometry, I think this thing's going to be a riot. Now, the Salsa Timberjack has very similar numbers, and I was thrilled about that bike. And when I rode it, it didn't quite ride like I'd hoped the GeoChart would ride. It was harder to ride. It was harder to corner. It took a lot more thought and a lot more technique to ride it cleanly, at least in 29er mode. I think this thing's going to be a lot of fun. But remember, the GeoCharts only tell part of the story. And the best thing about the Trek Roscoe is Trek stores are in more places, at least in the United States, than just about any other brand, except maybe Specialized. Trek and Specialized are the big two. And what's exciting about this for me is that more people are going to be able to throw a leg over this in a parking lot and ride a medium large versus a large to see how that feels, and if the dropper's too long and if they feel way too stretched out. And that is a huge thing that cannot be overlooked. Hardtails are the hardest bikes on the planet to demo ride because no one brings them to demo events and very few shops stock them because they don't take them seriously. But Trek has an opportunity here to get a lot of Roscoes out there. Hopefully they're the 7, 8, and 9s and not the Roscoe 6, which is a totally different bike. And that'll let more people throw legs over them and get a feel for them because there's no replacement for a demo ride. Always throw a leg over the bike if you can. So while GeoCharts are helpful to make assumptions and inferences, nothing beats a test ride. Anytime you have the opportunity to test ride a bike, even if it's your buddy's bike, do it. You will learn something. You'll learn, oh, I don't like narrow bars, or I do like narrow bars, or wow, that stack's really tall, or whoa, that's a long reach. How did it affect how it worked? So even if you're not interested in this bike, go out and ride one from your dealer in the parking lot and make notes. Okay, this is a 440 reach. How do I feel about that? This is a 74.7 degree seat tube angle. How do I feel about that? This is a 430 chainstay. What does that feel like? And it will give you more of an idea. So now I'm going to compare the Roscoe 7, 8, and 9 real quick because this video is already too long. I'm mainly looking at components because the frame's identical between them. It's the same exact geometry. It should have the same exact stiffness. They should be identical other than color. So let's take a look. This is the 9, the highest end one, Fox Rhythm 36. It's got an XT derailleur with an SLX shifter. Roscoe 8. This has, we've got a RockShox 35 Gold RL, which is not a bad fork, but it's not a great fork. It's nowhere near as good as the Pike or the Sid or a Lyric. It'll work and it'll be stiff enough for you, but it just isn't super refined. You could get by with it for a couple years until you decide you want to upgrade. Let's see what other parts we've got. NX Eagle and GX Eagle. I don't mind SRAM NX. I think it's a great drivetrain. I've had friends twist the parallelogram on the derailleur over time, and so they prefer the GX derailleur, which is what Trek's done here. I prefer the GX shifter with the NX derailleur. I'm not very hard on derailleurs, and I like that crispier shift from the GX Eagle shifter, but that's an easy upgrade. That's, you know, 50, 60 bucks to just upgrade the shifter, then you have it shifting great. I actually like this bike a lot, except for that fork. We got an X1 Eagle crankset. I'd be tempted to go with this bike, sell that fork or use it on another project and get a Pike on here and have a really cool bike and a GX shifter. Roscoe 7. Ooh, that's a fun color. Let's see what other colors they got. Yeah, black on black's boring. It does look cool with that silver though. I'm just over black bikes. Oh, that's hot. So this bike comes in at 1,700 bucks, which is still a lot of money, but these days bikes are getting expensive, and this is an entry-level true mountain bike, a good mountain bike. We've got a RockShox Recon Silver RL. That fork's okay. It's not bad, and you can make it work. You can still adjust the pressure. You can still put tokens in it. It's still got rebound and compression, so you can dial it in, but it's 32 mil stanchion. If you're a bigger rider, you're gonna feel that flex. Let's see what else we got. This is interesting. We got a Shimano hub here where we had Bontrager before. Let's see. Wow, that's awesome. That still has those same tires. I like that. Now on the drivetrain, we got a Dior shifter and derailleur. I'm fine with that. I don't see the benefit in going up to SLX or XT. You could go this way and then get the XT shifter and get that double click and get a little bit crisper performance. The Dior's heavier. There's more steel than aluminum in the cassette, but that just makes it more durable. And this is only 1.5 pounds more than the top of the line one. Rim. Bontrager line 30, 28 hole. All right, so same rim. Ooh, I like this. Okay. So which of the three would I buy? This is the one I'm buying. I would buy this, take the fork off before I even ride it, sell it on Pink Bike for 300 bucks, put that 300 bucks toward a Pike, buy a Pike for 750. I'd probably get a Pike Select because those are fine for me, and then I'd have a little bit less than that. So then I'm close to 2,100 on this bike. I'd set it up tubeless. I'd get a nice set of pedals, and then I'd just ride it and see what's not working and then make some small changes. Probably a bigger front rotor, bigger rear rotor, little things like that, and then just ride the pants off it and take the extra money that I saved and take more clinics, because clinics are the best way you could spend on your money. This is the thought that I put into every single hardtail on the market. And if you don't know how to do this, or this overwhelms you, or it's like drinking from a fire hose and there's so many bikes that it's hard to compare them, that's why I offer my bike consultation service on Patreon, to make your life easier, to save you from spending the $2,700 or $2,800 on the Roscoe 9 when you could have built a Roscoe 7 even cooler for cheaper. And that's my goal. That's my business. That's how I provide for my family, and that's how I make this channel possible. I consult with people on tons of different bikes, and I've ridden more modern hardtails than anyone on the planet. In fact, I get companies emailing me saying, hey, how does our bike ride compared to so-and-so's, our competitor's bike? And I love sharing my knowledge with other people on Patreon. So if you need help picking your next bike, or you're not sure which components are worth swapping, or you need advice on forks, I do all of that over on Patreon, patreon.com/hardtailparty. If that's not your drive, feel free to keep enjoying these free videos, but make sure to like and subscribe. That really helps my channel. So personally, I think Trek knocked it out of the park on this, at least on paper. I can't wait to ride one and see if it's a stiff ride, if it's a compliant ride, see how much clearance there is in there with those 2.6s, and just see how it feels overall. I'm not sure which sizing I would go with. I'm probably going to get a medium if they send me one for review, maybe a medium large. shoot, I don't know. We'll see. But what a surprise that the Roscoe 7 is the one I would recommend with a fork upgrade to be quite the rowdy bike for the price. So I'm super glad that this bike is out there. I would have done external cable routing and I would have done a steeper seat angle. And I think it's a little bit overpriced, but bikes keep going up and I haven't quite caught up to the new bike prices yet in my brain. Everything looks expensive and overpriced, but when I compare it to other models, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe not a ton more. But then you look at something like a Yeti Arc and what you get for $700 more, you get way more bang for your buck out of that. Carbon frame, Fox performance suspension, just better parts all around for a little bit more. I think this is a little bit priced a little bit high for what it's got, but I'm super thrilled with the direction that this is going. I'm now excited to try the Roscoe instead of dreading reviewing that because I knew it wasn't going to be a favorable review. So that's all conjecture and assumption and inferences based on what we have available online, but I'm excited for this bike. Trek has really done a lot to bring this up to the modern era, and I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun because these are going to be everywhere and people are going to get familiar with them and have a baseline. So now I can compare how bike A compares to the new Roscoe, and if you've ridden the new Roscoe, you'll have a frame of reference as well. Thanks for watching. There's a party in the mountains and you're invited.